It's time to get fancy with my fluffy and flourless mini vanilla cupcakes. And the challenge here is to make the cupcakes have the same taste and texture as cupcakes made using wheat flour. So first I got ready by lining my cupcake tins. The recipe makes 36 cupcakes, and I'll just set these aside. And just like that French chocolate torte, I'm starting by whipping some egg whites. I have 4 egg whites at room temperature. I'm gonna whip them up with a 1/4 cup of sugar until they reach a soft peak. There we go, a nice soft peak with a little bit of shine. Just a hint of a curl. And I'll set these aside. So even in traditional wheat flour cakes, you often find whipping the egg whites is part of the technique. It just ensures you're going to have a light, fluffy cupcake. And now I'll switch to the paddle attachment and add a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature. And I'll add to that 3/4 cup of sugar. And this method for making a cake is traditional. Creaming the butter and sugar is the first step. Scrape down the sides of the bowl. I can add my 4 egg yolks that I reserved from the whites I separated earlier. And I'll add 2 teaspoons of vanilla bean paste. So this is the extract, but also with the seeds in it. So you see that lovely speckle throughout the cupcake. And I'll just blend this for a second. One more scrape of the bowl. And this is where we have fun with our flourless, working with the dry ingredients. So as a general rule, if you're taking wheat flour out of a conventional recipe and you want to replace it with something gluten-free, think in thirds. So for a 1 cup measure of wheat flour, you want to measure 2/3 of a cup of something with structure. That could be rice flour, chickpea flour, quinoa flour, and the other 1/3 of a cup, a starch. I particularly like coconut flour in this recipe because of its light color, its mild taste, and its delicate grind. And you do use tapioca over cornstarch because it's 3 times stronger. So it really does give you the set you need. And I'll add 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'll sift that all together. And you can find coconut flour at a health food store or a bulk store. Now my liquid is 1/2 cup of milk that's at room temperature. And I'm gonna alternate my dry ingredients and wet, just like a traditional cupcake recipe. And there we go. Now the last step is to fold in those whites. And the base batter is quite dense, so fully expect to watch these egg whites deflate. That's part of the recipe, and once they bake, they just fluff back up again. So there we go, a proper cupcake batter. Now, I'll scoop out my cupcakes. You want to fill them about 3/4 the way full. They will expand. Each cupcake will be precise, and then there'll be no arguments over who gets a bigger cupcake. These are ready for the oven, and I've preheated it to 350. And because they're so little, they only take 15 to 18 minutes to bake. But let me show you the cupcakes first. They've cooled, come out of the pans, and you can see how easily they peel out. Look at that interior. Textbook cupcake. In fact, when I was playing with this recipe, I fed it to my husband, Michael, and guess what? I didn't even tell him they were flourless. He had no idea. They are delectable. Now to make that buttercream frosting, I've started by beating a cup of unsalted butter. It's at room temperature, so it's nice and smooth. And I've sifted 8 cups of icing sugar, but I'm only going to add a few cups to start with. I'll start with 3. The amount of icing sugar you have to add depends wholly on the temperature of your butter to start with. If it's a warm day, you may need more icing sugar. A little cooler, a little less. There we go, that's nice and smooth. So now to add a bit of liquid, 1/2 cup of milk, and I'll pour that right in. And I'll add some vanilla bean paste. Now I'll start adding more icing sugar, beating it after a few additions, checking the consistency, and seeing if I need to add more. Oh yeah, I can tell my butter was really soft. There we go. And you can see when I lift the paddle, the buttercream holds its shape, so I know it will hold every petal I pipe. Now you can go, of course, I'm piping roses, you could go with a natural white color, but why not tint it? Always better to add a little, and then you can always add more if you want. Just getting right to the bottom. There we go. I've got a disposable piping bag and a large petal tip. It's actually a good idea not to overfill your piping bag. Because you pipe squeezing from the top, you don't want your hand so far away from the tip that you can't really feel what you're doing. Give it a twist so the icing goes where it should. Now, if you need to, take a look at a rose. See how the petals align themselves. And a rose starts in the center with just a little bud. So that's your starting base. And you start just little half arc motions. And just like roses in a garden, each one is different. Any mistakes are erasable. You just scrape it off and start again. And there you have a rose. And then you fill in the sides with a few green leaves. And now you can add to your bouquet.